all here because we're interested in finding true meaning in life. At least I hope you are. And I was just in Malaysia the last 10 days, and they asked me to give a sutta retreat. And I didn't know what a sutta retreat is. So I had to find out the hard way. So I had to come up with all these suttas to present to people in the context of a meditation retreat. And it was quite a challenge, but it was very lovely because I got to read a lot of the beautiful teachings of the Buddha and pick and choose to find the right ones to present to these good people on the retreat. And in the course of that, I was reminded of how the Buddha talks about this path and how we arrive at this path, how we develop it. And in one of the suttas, the Buddha was saying, well, essentially there's different ways of arriving at faith. Yeah? So we can arrive at faith, which is a very important prerequisite for us to put forth effort in trying to develop the Dhamma. But faith is something that we get either through inspiration in the meaning of where this Dhamma of the Buddha is leading, inspiration in the Dhamma, the essence of what, if you want to call it, the true nature of our existence. But also the other way to arrive at faith is through suffering. But of course for most people when they suffer, it's like the Buddha said in the suttas, it's like they're beating their breasts and they become distraught and they get all depressed and they wallow in their suffering. But if we look at suffering wisely, then the Buddha said that actually leads to faith, because it leads to the thought, for instance, that there must be a way out of this whole mass of suffering. But regardless how we arrive at faith, it is that faith that we need, that the Buddha was actually fully enlightened, that he actually knew what he was talking about. We need to have the faith that the Dhamma was perfectly proclaimed by the Blessed One as we're chanting and we do the evening puja, and that the Sangha of noble ones has practiced well, and that they are able to lead the way and lead by example. So once that faith is there, then we get this sense of gladness, a sense of what the Buddha called pamoja, which is a sense of inner contentment, a sense of inner, it's a kind of joy. And we need that. It's sort of a gladdening of the mind, if you like. And from that, we can get joy, this sort of rapture, what the Buddha called piti. And then the piti leads to this quality which is very important in our practice, where things start to calm down, as the Buddha called kaya passaddhi. It's like in the meditation when the body sort of becomes still and light, and it kind of fades almost into the background, and the mind becomes calm alongside with it. And then comes this beautiful sense of happiness. And the happiness leads to concentration, to samadhi. And we need samadhi. We need the mind to collect, to come together, to be still, to become unified, so that we can actually see deeper into the nature of our experience. And then with samadhi comes this beautiful quality of equanimity, which I often point out actually means a looking on. Hekati, the infinitive of, it means to look. And upeka means to look intensely, to look on. And the reason they call it equanimity is because the only way you can really look on to experience is if you no longer have a vested interest in what you see. There's no more liking and no more disliking. That's why they call it equanimity. But the literal translation of upeka means to look on. And that's what we do in meditation. We look onto something for a long period of time so that we can understand it. We look at our own experience. We look at this body, we look at feelings, we look at how perception works. We look at our thoughts, the process that goes on. But for all that to take place, we need that faith as a foundation. We need that faith that leads to the quest for the truth, which brings up that gladness and that joy and that calming, the happiness. So when the Buddha said there's these two ways of arriving at faith, to initiate this process, which is a natural process. It happens to anybody who really practices. With time, we get there. But how do we initiate it? Because who wants to look at suffering, right? Nobody wants to suffer. Because nobody wants to suffer, we never really look at suffering. And because we never really look, we never really see it. And it's like Luang Por Chah once said, if you don't look at it, you don't see it, you never understand it. If you never understand suffering, you can never be free from it. So never forget that, really understanding suffering and looking at it with wisdom is what the Buddha promised. Is our number one teacher, dukkha, the first noble truth of suffering. And the interesting thing is when we realize that truth, we realize it's no longer us that suffer. It's just suffering that arises and suffering that passes away. That's what we realize when we see the first noble truth. And before, it's my suffering. And that's why we're afraid of it. That's why we're afraid of looking at it. And the other way to get to this faith is through inspiration. And I know a lot of you have had the opportunity to study the teachings and meet with some of the great teachers. Some of you might have gone on a pilgrimage to India, seen the places where the Buddha himself used to live and teach and practice, reading the suttas, listening to Dhamma. We get that inspiration that can also lead to faith. When I first came across Luang Por Chah's teaching when I went to Thailand, it was like, it was just wow. It was just like a revelation. finally someone who knew what they were talking about. You go around the world asking questions and nobody has the answers to. And finally you read something and it all of a sudden it makes sense. It started talking about things like impermanence, a topic that has been part of my experience ever since I was a teenager. There's death, impermanence, things changing, people coming and going, leaving, situations changing, impermanence. And then finally somebody was actually talking about it as a reality of existence. They're talking about things like suffering, talking about the idea that for most of our experience, we're not in control. It doesn't really belong to us. The body doesn't belong to us. The feelings don't belong to us. Perceptions don't belong to us. Thoughts don't belong to us. Anybody who thinks they're in control, ask them to stop thinking for 10 minutes. Or ask them to think what they want to think. It's a psychic power that the Buddha highly praised if you are able to think the thoughts that you want to think and not think the thoughts that you don't want to think. And I guarantee no one in this room can do it. So much for being in control. We're not in control. It's conditioned. It's dependently arisen. We created conditions. We formed habits. And these things repeat themselves. A certain sense contact arises. That sense contact arises a certain feeling. And based on that feeling, depending on how we trained ourselves, conditioned ourselves, we feel we want it or we don't want it. A lot of our experience is just habit. So really being in control, it only happens when we manage to get rid of these things we call hindrances. The Buddha called them hindrances for a reason, because they hinder wisdom and they obstruct the mind being peaceful. So they hinder us from peace and they hinder us from wisdom, from understanding. So we basically have to, I don't want to say we have to make a choice. Sometimes a choice is made for us by our own conditioning. But we need to look into our own character, our own temperament, and see if we are more the person who gets inspired, gets high on contemplating Dhamma, listening to Dhamma, going to places like India, the holy places, going to see different teachers. Is that what brings up faith in us? Or are we perhaps more the person that needs to actually look at reality with a bit more of a critical mind and not be afraid of seeing the inherent dukkha all around us? But it's of course easy to see the dukkha around us, but then to bring it back into our own hearts, that's where the difficulty lies, isn't it? We can always see other people suffering. We can see the misery in the world. We can see the wars and the conflict and the division. We can see the desperation, the poverty, sickness, all the terrible things. that we can see when we choose to look around us in the world, in one form or another, but then to bring that in and to make that connection as they, so me, as me, so them, as this, so that, as that, so this. So this realization that we're not exempt from that. We're not exempt from old age, we're not exempt from sickness, we're not exempt from death. We're not exempt from sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair. And we're not exempt from any of these things. And they may hit us at any time. If we have good karma and our bodies stay healthy for a long time, well, that's wonderful. We can be very grateful for that. But it's not a sure thing. So, but how do we look at this dukkha with wisdom so that it doesn't make us depressed? How do we look at it in a way that we actually gain faith? What is that wisdom element that we need to turn the experience of suffering into something that leads us towards liberation? How do you look at suffering with wisdom? To me, these characteristics that the Buddha talked about, they come in threes. So you got your impermanence, and you got the suffering, and you got the idea that these things are not self. So the not self aspect is the one where we realize that we're not in control. But also it gives us the possibility of looking at dukkha as not me, not mine, not self. I can look at impermanence as not me, not mine, not a self. So I can see suffering in impermanence, and I can see non-self in suffering. And if I can do that, then first of all, I'm much more able to be with the unpleasant aspects of our lives and look at them and study them with the interest of understanding them, because I'm no longer so afraid of them. But to be able to do that, we need to train the mind to be, or to have this quality we call sati, mindfulness. And I know it's a very overused word, and a lot of people struggle to even know what it means. I remember when I was a young monk, everybody used to say, just be mindful. And you wanted to go, nah, not again. What does it even mean? So it's to be mindful is like to be really present, a presence of mind, to be aware, to be awake, to be alert, to be sharp. And those are all synonyms or attributes that qualify this thing we call sati. Sati is an ability to know, but it's a knowing that can it can look from a distance, as it were, because it's a quality in and of itself that you can apply to the experience that you're having. Like if you are experiencing something with sati, you're experiencing it in a different way than you would be experiencing it without sati. If you're experiencing it without sati, you are it, you become it, and you suffer it. Whereas if that quality of sati is there, then there is a possibility of looking on. Sati gives you already a sense of that equanimity, that ability, that equilibrium, that ability to maintain the mind more neutral, not so much involved in the liking and the disliking of what you're actually seeing, what you're actually watching. So to be experiencing unpleasant things with sati is a lot different from experiencing unpleasant things without sati. If you experience it without sati, you are suffering. If you're experiencing it with sati, then there is suffering. And that's a huge difference. Because it allows us to be with any experience and to be able to allow it to be what it is. If we keep wanting to change our experience, first of all, we're always active, we're always restless, we're constantly on the move, we're constantly trying to arrange and manipulate experience so that it fits what we want. If we have sati and equanimity, and preferably a little bit of panya too, wisdom never hurts, then we can be with these things and it's okay, even if they're not the way we want them to be, even if they're not as pleasant as we would like them to be, even if they turn to be excruciatingly painful, we can endure with this quality of sati. It's quite amazing if you look in history, and I don't know, I'm not much of a history buff, to be honest. I could never be bothered with all the old stuff. It's already dead. But if you look back in history a little bit, you find that depending on the kind of period in time or what transpired, the people under pressure in difficult times, whether it was wars or famine or droughts, any kind of man-made or natural disaster, the amount of suffering people could endure is just incredible. It's just unbelievable. I mean, we're just a bunch of pussies compared to these people who were able to endure. I mean, just the women who brought 9, 10, 12, 13 children into this world. I mean, that used to be a thing. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, most women, after one, they say, no more. And then they do it again and again. And there's these little creatures there that are completely useless, They're completely useless. They can't eat, they can't do anything. Yeah? They're completely helpless. And we got to look after them. I mean, and that's just the so-called normal side of life. Yeah? Now you add, famine, drought, natural disasters, war to the mix, and you look at the kind of suffering that people endured, it's phenomenal. Yeah? But they also, when they were forced to endure, they were also forced to adopt a mind state which let them not despair. Of course, some did despair, of course. But those who developed wisdom in the process, and they were actually the ones we call the wise people. They really learned from experience. And isn't that what we should be doing, learning from experience? Society these days, it seems to me, more and more, is not really willing to learn from one another. All they want is to state what they believe and then reject everything else. That's why the world is becoming so fractured and so divided. People don't have the interest, seemingly, anymore to kind of talk and come to some solution, that is for the benefit of all. All they want is just to present their views and then to set themselves apart from others. And that's sad, because as human beings we have the ability to, do amazing things together. If we only, swallowed our pride sometimes. Being able to practice what the Buddha calls some self-effacement. Just taking ourselves back a notch and just allowing other people to come to the front, allowing other people to shine, allowing other people to express their wishes and their ideas. And we can actually learn from one another. And so the healthy society is one where a diversity actually leads to progress, rather than the opposite. But in the face of adversary, and we're probably going to see a lot of that. Because the world is, I don't know, it's always been there. So, it's nothing really new, but it's just I think the bar is lowered, if I may say that. Is that the bar is lowered. People, the willingness to commit violence is increasing. So the general sense of safety, people are afraid of their safety. Singapore is probably a fairly safe country. Germany still is, but many countries aren't. So it's like, I used to hitchhike when I was a teenager through countries where I wouldn't do it these days. I just wouldn't want to risk it, So things have changed. Things have changed, and they are changing. And the speed at which things change in the world. So who knows what we're up against in the next 5, 10, 15 years. People talk about changes. They don't even talk about, on the level of technology, people don't even talk about years anymore. They talk about months now. because things change within months on that level of technology, and talking about AI, what have you. So we don't know what we're up against. But in the midst of all that, as practitioners, spiritually inclined people who have seen the value in the teachings of the Buddha, then we know that our path must be a path inward rather than outward. We know, at the very least on the level of faith, after some time of practice, that there is no safety. There is no safety in the world. The only safety is in the heart, in our own heart. So if we don't find peace and contentment and happiness and liberation in our own heart, we're not going to find it outside. It doesn't matter where we get reborn after this round. There just isn't any safety in the external. There's never ever any safety in any existence. And the Buddha said, I do not praise any form of existence, even for a finger snap. So ultimately we know that the path must lead inward. And so if we take that into account, then contemplating the dukkha, the level of suffering we see around us, can help us to see that we are of the same fate. We are of the same nature. And that should lead us, when we do it with wisdom, to this ability to let things go, to turn away from things that we can't control, to turn away from things that are dukkha, suffering, from things that are impermanent, from things that are incapable of giving us any lasting happiness. Even though we still need to function in that world, it doesn't mean that we don't function in that world anymore. Quite the opposite. I mean, I can still function. I've been a monk for 35 years, 37 years. I think I'm still functioning okay. But, there is the understanding that, when I close my eyes and I take the mind on this journey inward, there's this sense of this feels right. This is where it needs to go. This is where freedom lies. Freedom lies in the heart of each and every one of you. So there's no, happily ever after in the world. But it still means that we have to take responsibility for our actions in that world. It still means that we have to be the kind of people who set an example to the people around us through our own integrity, through our own ability to act with a sense of nobility, with a sense of knowing what's essentially right and wrong. There is right and wrong. There is wholesome and there is unwholesome. There are consequences of our actions as part of right view. If we don't understand that, if everything goes, if every lie goes, if we accept the lies that we've been told, and we don't speak up, if we just swallow it, then we can't hold anyone else responsible. We need to see that we are the ones who need to live in a way that other people can look up to. And that's a responsibility. It's a responsibility that we have. And we don't even need to be monks for that. But as a Buddhist layperson, we should also be people who provide harmony in society, who get happiness from promoting harmony, to get happiness from giving something to society. And it doesn't need to be material, it could be just anything. Your skills, your time, your wisdom, just being able to share what we can, to make the immediate vicinity around us a better place. And then from that, we can look to the deeper aspects of the Buddhist teaching. And we find that we have the courage to accept these deeper truths that most people spend a lifetime running away from. Because they think that, well, if I don't look at suffering, well, I don't see it, if I can just somehow blend it out, it's not going to happen to me. But of course it doesn't work that way. So yeah, find your approach, find your inspiration, find your inspiration where you can. By all means, go on an India trip, go on a pilgrimage, sit in the places where the Buddha said, and just let the tears stream down your cheeks, tears of joy. I remember standing at the place where the Buddha was born in Bodh Gaya for about half an hour while the other pilgrims would put candles and incense and flowers on that slab where the Buddha was born. And I was just standing there. I had put my flowers already down. I was just, I don't know, must have lost 2 liters of water there. But I was blissed out of my mind, It's just the gratitude and the kind of stuff, And of course, the next time I did a pilgrimage there, I stood in the same place, and I was waiting for it. Of course, it never happened. That's suffering. That's really suffering. Because you can't plan these things. You can't. It's conditioned. You're not in control. It happens because you created the right causes at some point in the past, and they came to fruition at that place, at that time, but the next time is different. You can't count on that. So take your inspiration wherever you can get it, and develop that faith, and from faith, build up the energy to put in the time, to meditate. And don't be afraid of looking at suffering and then bringing it into your own heart. As outside, so inside. As inside, so outside. I'm of the same nature. I'm not exempt from that. And it's humbling, but it's also beautiful. But with sati, like I said, there is this sense of rising above. You're rising above suffering. And that's where the faith really leads, isn't it? Is that faith that the Buddha talks about, is the faith that there is a way out. The Buddha wasn't teaching a negative teaching, because he was talking about suffering. The Buddha was the only one who taught a way out of suffering. Everybody knows that old age is suffering, and that sickness is suffering, and that death is suffering. We don't need a Buddha for that. But nobody knew the way out. It's the attachment to things that don't belong to us. It's the attachment to things that we can't control. That's where the problem lies. Being able to let go of craving and desire, aversion, conceit, arrogance, pride, vanity. And letting go of that, that's the way out. And in that moment of inspiration, where that joy really, fills up your heart, then that doorway, that path out, is something it becomes tangible. You don't quite know how to get there yet, but the faith is there, and this profound sense of, wow, yeah, there is a way out. And then once you get your first experiences of deep meditation, then it all starts to make even more sense. You get your first little insights that lead to letting go. Because insight leads to peace, and peace leads to insight. If it doesn't, if insight doesn't lead to peace, it wasn't true insight. If peace doesn't lead to insight, it wasn't true peace. So peace and insight, they go together, and they help each other, and need to be developed together. So we're developing calm and peaceful states of mind, and joy and happiness, contentment. And then we develop the understanding into the nature of what we're actually experiencing here. Rather than being caught in the superficiality of it all, you cut through the superficiality, but you cut through it without the what's the word, the arrogance, of, or what is it, the conceit of being better. You're not looking down on people who can't do it, but you have compassion for people who can't do it. You can have compassion for evil people, which doesn't mean you condone evil, but it means you understand that, well, that's just part of the human condition. And it doesn't go away just because you want it to. So anyway, I have a sense that there might be some questions. I was also asked to leave a bit of time for that at the end. And since we already started a bit late, I just want to maybe finish the talk here and give you the opportunity to maybe ask, have a bit of a discussion if you like. So, Ewang.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. If there are any questions, you can raise your hand. I can pass the mic to you.
Ajahn, good evening. Thank you so much for coming, and really appreciate the Dhamma talk. And I've been listening to your Dhamma talk on YouTube from years beyond during COVID period, and it was very, very insightful. I'd just like to know, when I read the news, it's very depressing, and it affects my mental state, and it affects my meditation.
Sorry, it's a little bit unclear. Can you speak a little bit up?
Okay. When I read the news, it affects my mental state, and it affects my meditation. So I avoid the news and I just read the headlines. But in so doing, sometimes I still get affected, like slight depressed and sad. from the negativity of the news.
Right.
How do I make it into fertilizer, as you said, make it into panya, turn it into panya, because the mind suffers when I read, and it does affect me quite a fair bit.
Yeah.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.
It's like if you're anything like me, I'm very sensitive as well to these things. So when it's like some of us we're a little bit more open, like our nervous system seemingly is a little bit too close to the surface of the skin. So we can't help but feel. It has a positive quality that we're what we call empathetic. We can empathize, but it also means we feel these things deeper, and so we need. Well, one of the things we need to do is to make the mind stronger. So you can only take so much. So you have to just be very careful and not take on too much of that world. It's like you need to find ways of balancing that. So with research these days, it's not easy to get to the research or to the aspects of what happens in the world that are actually inspiring, because they're somewhat a little bit more hidden. It's like you need to dig deeper, But there's a lot of good happening in the world, but it's not the kind of good that you get on the 7 o'clock news. It's that they're not interested in presenting that because it doesn't sell or whatever, It's like, so there is that good. There is a lot of people who, even in the midst of a chaos, who are doing a lot of good. So if you really wanted to use that for inspiration on that level, you could, but it takes a bit of effort to find that. But there are these kind of reports that are a bit more balanced, also on the level of news. So you have to also make a choice what kind of news channels you're actually looking at. It's like if you're living in the United States and you watch exclusively Fox News, then you might have a problem there. So I don't know what the story is here, But you gotta choose where you're looking, but also how much, But then at the same time, also it's like you need to just kind of really be able to say no to some of that, just not take it in, because you realize it's just not productive. I mean, I honestly, I do not read newspapers. I do not watch the television. I do not listen to the radio. I do not watch YouTube clips on current affairs or any of that. So the relatively limited knowledge which I have, which in my opinion is adequate, comes from what people bring to me, what people tell me. So you're still around people, you're still interacting with people, and you'll always be interacting with people who engage more in that world. So you still get your information. I think the one of the longest things to actually arrive in my memory was the death of Lady D. I think I only found that out 3 years later or something like that. But it wasn't all that important. Just as a silly example. But no, it's just pace yourself, balance yourself, and realize that, if the mind isn't very strong yet, if the mindfulness and wisdom haven't got the strength, or the equanimity is not there, then taking on too much of that, it will always lead to negativity, to depression, to kind of anxiety, because you're a little bit more sensitive than other people, so you have to protect yourself more.
Anyone have any questions? You can raise your hand.
Thank you, Bhante. May I ask, how does the practice of dana and sila and bhavana support and reinforce each other?
Support what?
Support each other.
Each other as human beings. So how does the practice of dana, sila and bhavana serve us as a community?
No, that means how does, when we practice dana, how does dana support the practice of sila? And when we practice sila, how does sila support bhavana?
Okay. So the question is then, how does the gradual training, how does it work? How do the basics serve the next level and the next level, and so on and so forth? Yeah. So when we traditionally speak about dana, sila and bhavana, or sila, samadhi, panya, depending on which one you choose, then you have a foundation. I like the dana, sila, bhavana one, because in the context it makes, for this purpose, it might be the nicer one to use, because I just recently reminded of the fact that dana is something that people can practice even though they haven't got appreciation for sila yet. So I was just telling the joke, I said, well, if a bank robber comes to the monastery and makes a donation, you can receive it, because according to the Vinaya, a bank robber is a job, is a livelihood, is a wrong livelihood, but it's still a livelihood. Somebody goes and plays in the casino and wins $1 million, decides to go to the monastery and make a donation. You don't have to not take it. You can receive it. So what I'm saying is, they may be motivated by generosity, but they have not yet understood that taking responsibility for their own actions on the level of sila, which is actions of body and speech, is actually important. So, but what dana that does gradually, and how it supports sila, is that you're seeing that when you actually give, it's an act of renunciation. It's an act of sharing. Yeah? So when you see that actually makes you happy, so that giving in society is actually something that makes you happy, then you're also already seeing that your actions have consequences. You see? So your action of being kind, of doing something good, even though it's not motivated by the idea of wholesome and unwholesome, it's just a heartfelt sense of, I want to give something, I want to share something. But that leads to you understanding that these actions have consequences, and that can lead to your understanding that your other actions also have consequences. And then if somebody comes and explains to you that your physical actions and your verbal actions are actually what we call universal principles, say killing is always unwholesome. It doesn't matter what country you live in, doesn't matter what society, killing is always unwholesome, stealing is always unwholesome, lying is always unwholesome. So once you understand that, yeah, then you understand the difference, or you can also go to the next step and understand the difference between these universal principles and what we call conventions. Because conventions, they may change from society to society. Yeah, you do things different in Singapore than we do it in Germany. China does things differently. Arab countries do it differently. Whatever. Yeah, but they're conventions. Yeah? But within those conventions, the 5 precepts, yeah, they always hold. Doesn't matter what country you are. Yeah? So killing, stealing, lying, committing adultery, they're always akusala, unwholesome. And so then from that you can understand that taking responsibility for your own actions is important. And then once you do that, you gain progressively more happiness, inner happiness and contentment from understanding your actions have consequences and from acting appropriately. Yeah? And that brings a sense of profound contentment, a sense of non-remorse, which is very important. You have no guilt, you don't have no shame, you don't feel guilty because you haven't done anything wrong. Yeah? And that gives you the foundation for when you then take up a meditation object, to be able to be with yourself and be at ease with yourself. It's like you can enjoy your own company because you don't feel bad about yourself, you don't feel guilty. And so that's how dana can lead to understanding of sila, and then sila gives you the foundation of contentment and joy that you need to calm the mind, or to even be able to be with yourself. Most people, you lock them in a dark room for 10 minutes, they go crazy. They can't be with themselves. They're too restless. I mean, they can't stand themselves. They have to constantly run away from themselves because they're already doing evil things or bad things or silly things. Yeah? But someone who's finally accepted that they need to take responsibilities for their actions, because their actions have actually consequences and they've seen it, yeah? And they can actually be with themselves and they feel good about themselves. And that's how their minds can become more peaceful. Is that okay? One in the back there.
Thank you so much, Ajahn, for coming here today. Very insightful talk. We were just talking about the 5 precepts, a right speech and a prohibition against lying. And lying is regarded as unwholesome and unskillful. Of course, we all agree. But there are some gray areas. Suppose it's World War II, and Anne Frank is staying at my house. She's a Jew. And the Nazis are knocking on the door. And they say, "Is there a Jew in this house?" And I know that if I say, "Oh, yes, there is," they will then torture and slaughter Anne Frank. So without even a moment's hesitation, I say, "No, there are no Jews here." So how can the Dharma accommodate this gray area in this example?
It's not a gray area at all. It's black and white. The only thing is that you have to be willing to lie, and you're taking responsibility for that, and you're quite willing to do that, and you're rightly quite willing to do that. But the problem is, if you deceive yourself into thinking that you're not lying, then you got a problem. So you want to lie to the Nazis, yeah, but it's still a lie. So a lie is a lie is a lie. There's no black lie, white lie, gray lie, green lie, brown lie. They're all lies. Yeah.
That's very helpful.
It's like you take responsibility for that lie. Yeah. But the most important thing is you don't lie to yourself by telling yourself that you're not lying. Because to be interested in the truth means to be truthful, to uphold the truth, And the way you uphold the truth is by always saying, this is my truth. Yeah? So you don't pretend that you know more than you do. Yeah? But in cases like the one you mentioned, which is a classic that always comes up, you would have to just take responsibility for that lie. Yeah? It's like there was a point when these days you go into different countries, the immigration laws have changed. The questions they ask you become more and more and more, because the idea is everybody lies and nobody trusts nobody anymore. So you have to prove and double prove and triple prove and quadruple prove that you are the one that you think that you say you are. So if you lie in these documentations, you got a problem. And if you don't lie, you got a problem. So you choose. You see, it's like, but try not to lie to yourself. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's like I made a choice to not lie. Yeah, but I paid the price. Yeah. But in the end, it turned out good. Well, let me tell you the story before beating around the bush. I need a teaching permit to be teaching here tonight in Singapore, right? So the question was, have you ever entered the country with a different passport under a different name? Yeah? Now, my name is Thorsten Friedrich, and I'm from Germany. But I'm a bhikkhu since 37 years. In Australia, you can change your name by default. So in my Australian passport, my name is Bhikkhu Cattamalo. Yeah? I've entered Singapore with both documents in the past. Yeah? But that question had previously not occurred. Once it occurred, I answered truthfully, yeah? And they didn't want to give me a teaching permit because they didn't like the fact that I had two passports with two different names. Yeah? So then the people who were doing the permit were smart enough and they dug up an old teaching permit under the other name in the other passport. And they brought it to the authorities, and then in the end, a day before I entered Singapore, they granted the teaching permit. But they thought they would never change it because they had refused it. So they cancelled all the activities. So then they gave me the teaching permit and they had to start all the activities again. So in the end, it turned out okay. I got the teaching permit. Yeah? But in the short term, you would have thought, well, it's better not to say that I entered the country on another passport because it's just going to be a hassle, blah, 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 blah. Yeah? But I figured, well, I don't want to lie. Yeah? But it led to initial confusion and trouble, but in the end, it turned out good. So that's one case, but your case obviously is a bit more dramatic, so...
Thank you so much, Ajahn. Thank you.
There you go.
Anybody has any questions?
Ajahn, in the case of Anne Frank, can I just say that it was not a selfish reason to lie? The person who answered the Nazis, it wasn't coming from a selfish reason.
No.
Usually when we lie, it's because it's a selfish reason. We want our pride, that we are right. We want to put other people down, that they are wrong. We want to save our face, etc., knowingly or unknowingly. But this person who lied to the Nazis put it was in order to save a life.
Oh no, I understood that. I didn't think it was selfish.
Yeah,
Quite the
no,
contrary. I mean, he
yeah.
risked his own life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why I just wanted to add on that in this case, I find that it was totally not selfish to lie. But in our day-to-day life, we lie often, knowingly or unknowingly,
Right.
to save face, and they are all usually selfish reasons.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Ajahn Cattamalo. Thank you for your talk. I have a short question, but I've been reading about dependent origination, and it's difficult for me to understand. So I was just wondering if you could explain it in a less difficult, in a simpler manner. I mean,
Okay.
because I find your talk very, very succinct, but very insightful. So I was hoping that maybe you could explain that part about dependent origination.
I think
Thank you.
dependent origination is the one that everybody finds difficult. And remember, there's a story in the suttas where the Venerable Ananda said to the Buddha, "Oh, paticca samuppada, now I get it. It's really profound." And the Buddha just sort of clobbered him and he said, you know, don't say that. You haven't even understood it really yet. So don't say that you don't think you understood dependent origination. Is much more profound than that. So even Ananda, Venerable Ananda, who was a stream enterer at the time, he had not fully penetrated it. So I don't want to pretend that I understand it, but you know, I just in a few sentences, just to give you an idea of how I try to approach that particular topic, which is obviously very complex, is to see it as a structure of our experience. And the reason it's important to see it as a structure rather than a linear set of things, one leading to another thing, is if you see it like that, then you can never understand what it really is, because people believe in most Buddhist countries that dependent origination has something to do with karma, which it doesn't. I mean, karma was taken for granted at the time of the Buddha. I mean, okay, there were these ascetics who didn't believe it, but in general, you know, it wasn't a big thing. So the heart, or the hardest, the core of the Buddhist teaching is not about karma. It's about avijja paccaya sankhara, which means ignorance, not knowing, leads to formations. So that is what it means, and it means that you can look at any of these 12 links, and you see the rest of them. So you look at one. It's like you're looking at one link. You're looking at experience from one particular angle. So all these 12 links, they build a structure. But it means that when the first link is there, all of these links are there. It's not like you have this one and then that comes, and then the next one and the next one. Once avijja is there, once wrong understanding is there, all the rest is there, always. They rise and fall simultaneously. So you look at your experience from a point of view of avijja. You can look at it from a point of view of any of these 12 links. And then what you need, to liberate the mind, the only way to liberate the mind is to turn avijja into vijja, and then the whole thing falls apart like a card house. So you take away avijja, not knowing, then the whole structure collapses. So anybody who sees the Dhamma to the level of becoming an arhat, for the arhat there is no more paticca samuppada. All that just collapses. And that's difficult to understand because people don't understand formations. They don't understand sankhara. And that's where the difficulty comes in. Because if you understand what formations are, then at least it becomes a little bit easier. But if sankhara is still believed to be exclusively cetana, which is intention, and that the whole thing has to do something with kamma, then you won't be able to see it for what it is. You'll always see it in terms of the way the late Buddhist traditions teach it in terms of different lifetimes, 3 lifetimes or whatever. Yeah. And at least in my understanding and the way I understand the Dhamma or the Buddha taught, as well as the Kuba Ajahns from our tradition, that's not the case. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. So you can shop around for some more answers. Okay, time for one more. Don't be shy.
Come, last one.
Ajahn, first of all, I want to apologize again for picking up you late.
No need.
Sorry to the attendees here.
No need. All good.
Secondly, I want to ask about what you said in the first half of the talk about having the practice and the sati that can rise above suffering. So recently I was in a very crowded event with thousands of people, so you probably know which one. And then I got into a situation where it was very chaotic, and we were in a small group trying to make a move, but there was some difference in opinion. So I approached one of the team leaders, first time and then second time, suggesting something, but in the end, it irritated him quite a bit, that he kind of raised his voice and told me off on a number of fronts. Yeah. So maybe after practicing for a while with some sati, so immediately I could sense his anger, and then immediately I apologized with quite a calm feeling. Yeah, and then I also had that feeling that he was in actually a very bad situation, like suffering, like being in anger, and then he had to kind of voice it out, etc., etc. And after I apologized, after he kind of nagged for a while, then he calmed down. Then an hour later, when I saw him, then I apologized again. I'm not in the business of apology, of course, to the extent of also just now picking you up late. But for the second time, I apologized to him was actually just to check whether it's okay, whether he really calmed down. Then he said a number of things, and finally he was okay. So I was very happy with the closure of that incident or accident. But Ajahn, my question is whether the approach was correct, sort of having compassion and the calmness when these kind of situations arrive. And secondly, is it easy to get into a situation of looking down at a certain person? So where is the fine line of actually having compassion when we see that people are suffering, especially when they are working against us? And then secondly, what is the fine line? I hope my question is...
Well, it depends. It's a bit complicated, but I think it really depends on the degree to which you can take yourself back. If you need to assert yourself, or you feel you need to assert yourself, be it for your own benefit or for your seeming benefit of the group or someone else's benefit, doesn't matter, then yes, you will assert yourself, and then you will eventually rub up against someone who is of a different opinion. Yeah. So those kind of things, they happen, and so there's only a few people who, even though they know potentially that their way of doing things might even be better, but for the sake of maintaining harmony right from the start, they just take themselves back and just allow the situation to unfold according to how other people want it to unfold. If you can do that, if you can let go to that degree, it's fine. You avoid the whole thing altogether. You may end up in a slightly less ideal situation because the other person might see things a little bit wrong, or whatever that. But that's beside the point. But the more important thing in that story, at least that as far as I could make out, is the fact that you were willing to apologize. And I've done that in my life as a monk, where we have the ceremony of asking forgiveness, yeah? And it's generally the junior who does that. So if you are the junior, then you are the one who asks forgiveness. Whether you're right or whether you're wrong, doesn't really matter. Yeah? And even if you're right, you still ask forgiveness, but then you give the other person the opportunity to see his own error and apologize to you, which also happened to me. Yeah? So there were a few cases in my monastic life where I knew I was right, but I was also the junior, and the situation got out of hand. There was resentment, there was suffering, yeah, because of a misunderstanding that wasn't really my fault. But I took the initiative to ask forgiveness, yeah, and presented the opportunity to talk about it, and then we did talk about it, and the thing was solved. So that's where the benefit, or where the beauty in that lies, is in giving or presenting the opportunity for dialogue through your own humility. It's like you swallow your pride, ask for forgiveness, even though you may know that you were in the wrong, but you're actually presenting the opportunity for dialogue and for taking the situation to be solved. And in my experience, that it has always worked. How often is it that our pride just gets in the way? If we could just be a little bit more humble, a little bit more willing to also expose ourselves, because that's what we're doing. We're exposing ourselves. Yeah. But with the feeling of you're doing it from a wholesome mindset, and so yes, you're opening yourself up, but at the same time, if the other person isn't completely evil, he doesn't exploit that vulnerability, but he sees it as an opportunity to create the dialogue, or to find a solution. If people want to find a solution. Like I said earlier in the talk, these days a lot of times people don't want to find a solution. They just want to say, I'm right and you're wrong. And that's it, and that's sad.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Okay, I think it's getting late, so thank you, Thai Ajahn, for sharing the Dhamma and your